I could do to help you on your journey. And what was the other question? Where we can find me and what else? That's it.
And
Okay,
who,
good.
yeah, that's it. I think it's a lot of information because I'm probably going to ask questions that's going to reveal who you are, your personality, and why you are saving the world one soul at a time, my friend. So,
You don't know
first
how funny
question,
that is, man. You don't know how funny
yeah,
that is. So we'll talk about that too. That's great. All right.
absolutely. So, first question for you is why the book? How did you get it started? What's the purpose of it? And why did you want to share this with the world?
Yeah, I was hoping you're going to start out with some easier questions. Um, so why? Okay. Well, it's not just one reason. I wrote the book initially for myself because I'd been through this experience in my life quite some time ago. But it's not the kind of book you can write when you're in a relationship or a marriage because it's pretty explicit and it's about another woman. So I had to find the right space and the right time to do that. But I knew, just like it was an urge, right, to write this book because I knew it was going to be cathartic to me. And then as I'm writing it, I realized it can be very cathartic for other people as well, right? Because we sometimes learn through other people's experiences, right? And so I just went full into it and revealed who I really am and who I was at the time and warts and all. And it gave me such an amazing freedom. I thought, well, maybe other people would get the same feeling too. When you said about saving the world, it makes me laugh because my brother-in-law, who was not into any of this stuff, right? He was away in England. He was talking to one of my nieces, and he was saying, "How's everybody doing?" Yeah, and she was telling they were telling him, and he said, "Oh, how's Stephen doing? Is he still trying to save the world?" So that's why it made me laugh. Yeah, but you did say one soul at a time. We'll see what happens, right? Maybe I can get if I can get one, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
Of course, what I like to look about is if you can save one person, then that one person goes out in the world and saves someone else. So you were the tree and they're just branches of your greatness. Well, let's not be, I want to be humble today, right? Wisdom, branches of your wisdom.
Yeah.
So you mentioned relationships and you mentioned the book and you mentioned a woman or women or your dating experiences. Anytime I always told a story about the people I've dated, I purposely changed the names just because I know some of them listen to this podcast. So if you're out there, I love you. I just not in love with you anymore. Relationships. Why do you think in general so many of us struggle with relationships?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the name of the person in the book is not her real name, obviously, right? So I wouldn't do that, right? Um, so why was the question, why do we have problems with relationships? Was that the question?
Why do we struggle with them?
Oh, okay. Well, because a relationship is a reflection of you, right? And so everything is a relationship. Your job is a relationship. Your dog is a relationship. Your spouse is a relationship. Your business is a relationship. Everything is a relationship reflecting you back at you. But of course, people don't want to see that, right? And so we're going to struggle because we want to put it out on somebody else or something else who has the problem or is the problem instead of looking at ourselves because we're not taught that. We're taught to look at the external world and change the external world when the reality is the only thing that we can really change is ourselves, right? But if we change ourselves, we automatically change the world because our perception, the world around us will change.
So it's not me, it's you,
Correct.
but it's real, but it's really me.
Exactly. It's not me, it's you. I think that, yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. That's the world we live in, right?
Because I'm looking at that, and that takes a sense of vulnerability to say that I've had five bad relationships. I'm the common denominator. Maybe I need to fix me instead of saying that Steven's a narcissist, Terrain's a deadbeat, Johnny down the street is useless because he has five kids from five different women. It's the entire world, but not me because I'm God's gift to people. I'm catnip, right?
Right. Well, yeah. So first of all, those things could be true about those other people, but it doesn't matter. What matters is you're attracting them in your life. You're creating that you're bringing it in electromagnetically, however you want to define it. There's a million ways you can say, but the bottom line is you brought that into your life. You can't change them, but you can change yourself, right? And it's funny you said that about relationships. Again, very synchronistic because I've been married 4 times, and people will sometimes say to me, 4 times, man, that's a lot. That's unlucky. What was wrong with all those women? And I say, well, interesting you would ask. It's a question of mathematics, right? So 4 marriages, there's only one constant in all those marriages. It was me, right? So They were not the problem, I was. And I tell people, look, you don't have a relationship problem. You have a pattern problem. You're creating the patterns that are repeating themselves because, again, you're probably projecting out onto the person what went wrong instead of saying, as you just said, even though you may be God's gift to women or men, that may be true. But the bottom line is, if you're not getting what you want, you got to make the change in yourself, and then you'll attract what you want.
What are some of the obstacles that people are facing in identifying those patterns, Stephen, as you described?
Well, I think first thing is awareness terrain, right? If you're not aware, you're not going to be able to do anything, right? So first step is awareness, and there's a number of ways you can become aware. One is because you just get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you say, "Look, this is just not working. I'm exhausted. Okay, I got to do something else," right? Another way is therapy, right? Get somebody to help you because we can't see ourselves the way someone else can see us. And just make sure you find one that you resonate with or you connect with or you can trust. Trust is where it all is, right? You got to be able to feel like you can trust them. And then over time, let them help you by giving you tools. No one's going to heal you, right? You're going to do that yourself. That's your responsibility. And I think a lot of people, myself included, sometimes want to be saved, right? We want someone to save us. Never going to happen, right? You're going to do the work. You're going to save yourself. Somebody can give you the tools, can give you the tools. Like someone might want to build a house and they might say, okay, are you going to get help? No, I can do it all on my own, right? I got good hands. I'm strong. I can build my own house. Okay, well, good. Good luck with that. Let me know if you need any help. If you need any tools, would you like a hammer? Would you like a saw? Would you like a chisel? Would you know all these different things that can help you? And those are tools that we have that we can give to somebody else. Maybe give them in some insights of how to use the tools, when to use the tools, how they can be most effective for you, and help you with the specific tools that are going to be good for you. But we can't build that house. You got to build that house. That's your house, right? And then you're going to live in it. So you're going to make sure it's the house you want. It's designed the way you want, and you can be happy in that home because you are your home.
I remember speaking to someone where she came out of a relationship and she said that the next person she dates has to have X, Y, and Z. And then I asked her the question, did her previous relationship have that? She was like, no. So I was like, oh. So the next person has to do more because of what you left. And she's like, well, I'm not saying it like that. I'm like, that's the way it's coming across,
Right. You
right?
might not
When
have
it
said it
comes
like
to,
that. Yeah.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you might not have said it like that, but that's the meaning of what you're saying.
Exactly, right? So, and I think sometimes we get to your point in these patterns because if I look at my patterns in my 20s, like a lot of men probably, or even men and women in general, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. You said yes. I went on date number one, date number two, date number three. I remember here in Canada, we had something called the toonie. We have the loonie and a toonie, $1 bill, $2 bill. During that time in my 20s, you could watch a movie for $2, get on the bus for $2, and have a meal for $2. Steven, I was doing dates for $12. Beautiful. Cheap, but
Yeah.
beautiful. I didn't know what I was doing because when my relationships would end, I would get into the next one and it would end the same way as the previous. Until one day I asked the question, what is it that I actually want out of dating?
Mhm.
I needed to create a goal. Could that be one of the things that's missing? Is that when we start dating initially, we're just doing it to do it and we don't have an end game, marriage, common law, or anything else.
That's a great question, man. It's so layered, right? Uh, it depends, right? So you can set a goal, and that goal can become everything, and you're missing everything else, right? You see what I mean? You can become so focused. I'm doing this because I want to get married, and you're not really looking at the reality of the person with you, and is that someone you would want to marry because you just want to be focused on getting married, right? So goals can be good, but they can also create misperception, right? So I think intention, which is a little different than goal, right? My intention, what I'm looking for, and my intention is to have a deep, meaningful, long-term relationship. I am going to go out and I'm going to meet people and I'm going to find someone that I believe that I can create that with. It's not going to happen on the first date, but I'll have some insight as to whether I want to go and be with them again, right? it's a little intense than saying, my goal is to marry this chick. All right. So, but I think generally speaking, people don't have goals and they do kind of wander around and then they never get what they want because they've never been specific to the universe that this is what I want, right? It's like, how can you hit a target if you don't know what the target is? And if we're clear with the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, asking you shall what? Receive, right? You got to be clear about what you're asking for. Because if you're not, you're going to get everything, and it's going to be more difficult for you to be able to hit that target because you don't know what it is. So it's kind of yes and yes,
I
right?
like that. It's kind of yes and yes, not yes and no.
Yeah, right.
Do you think the seriousness and the intention of relationships has lost its value in some people's eyes?
Well, again, there's just yeah, I hate to generalize, which is always a good thing to say before you generalize, right? Because it's all unique. So sometimes I think people are too serious about relationships, right? Instead of making them fun, right? Enjoyable. Because when you can make it fun and have a good time, you really get to see the person underneath. Do they have a sense of humor? Can they laugh at themselves? One of the first things you said to me when we got on here is, I'm going to be humble, right? Do they have humility, right? Or are they so, I am this and I'm never going to step off that because I'm going to be afraid, right? And my image is everything to me. And, you got to worship me or I can treat you how I want and you just got to take it. I see this, right? And I'm sure you do too, that people believe these things, right? So for me, and again, it's just me, for me, having a sense of humor is critical, right? Because I'm laughing all the time and cutting up all the time, as you can tell. Um, and so if they don't have a sense of humor, we're not going to vibe. We're just not going to get on, because they're constantly going to be, rolling their eyes or trying to make it so I can't have fun because it makes them uncomfortable. Does that make sense? Yeah, you've been around those people, right? That don't like anybody being funny or, doing those things because it's just too uncomfortable for them because they don't know how to handle it. So I think, don't take it too seriously would be for me, and I probably my advice to some people as well, because I see that people are so intense about relationships and so afraid they're not going to get the relationship that they've always dreamed of. And so what that does is, as you know, if you want something too badly, you're going to push it away because you're afraid of not getting it. So you're actually going to get what you're focused on, which is I'm afraid of not getting it, so I'm not going to get it, right? Um, so again, we're creating it all, so you don't have to worry about it. Be relaxed, be yourself, and the right person will show up. You've got to be just careful that you're not so desperate to find someone you'll take whatever you get, right? That if someone just shows interest in you, like, oh, okay, this is it, right? And I was talking about at the beginning about toxic relationships. The relationships become toxic because one person is giving themselves away, right? They're giving up their identity. They're giving up everything about themselves to be with somebody else. And usually, not all the time, but usually that other person is going to take advantage of that. We got a giver and a taker. And one person can't give enough and the other person can't take enough. And so eventually you got nothing left, right? So again, we're generalizing. I'm not saying that everybody's in that situation, but those are a couple of examples there that seem to be prevalent these days.
And I like that you share that because most advice, if not all advice, should be in general, just because parts of it may fit your circumstances, parts may not,
Yeah.
right? And then maybe a majority of it that, oh my God, Stephen, it's like he's talking to me. Like I live that. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And there's some other people that be like, this guy Terrain, he thinks he's whatever.
Right.
I do. But sometimes it's a little bit difficult because if I look at those around me who I've coached, it's usually older women that I'm coaching. So 50s, 60s and older.
Okay.
The commonality that I see between them is one, they think they're too old for love. They
Mm.
think it has an expiry. Train, I'm not 20. I'm
Mm.
like, 20? When you were looking for your partner, you at the farmer's market, he dropped your handkerchief, he picked it up, and you guys went off on the 5-cent ferry. It was a different
Yeah.
experience back then. These days, what I try to let them know is the love that you're thinking about can be achieved in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 90s. And the reason why I share that is what you mentioned, it's your intention. Do you want it?
Hmm.
Yes, I want to be loved. Okay, perfect. The next question, and this is probably one of the hardest things that I find people struggle with, is what are you going to do about it?
Hmm. Hmm.
And maybe what are you going to stop doing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so first of all, you said it yourself. If you don't believe, you've heard this right. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. Right. So if you believe you can have a relationship at 90, then you can. Now, here's the thing. There'll be plenty of references to tell you you can't. So you got to find references that will show you that it can. So, for example, it's funny you would mention this. I just watched, I think it was a documentary about a therapist that had a lady that really wanted to get in a relationship. Now, she might have been 60, 70, 80, I don't know, but she's in that ballpark, right? And so she sent this lady to, I think what they call, it's like a surrogate. So what they did, this guy falls in love with you, and the woman falls in love with him, and they have a sexual relationship, the whole 9 yards, everything, which shows that it's possible. Now, after that happens, they have to literally extrapolate themselves from each other, right? Because they really do fall in love, right? So you can imagine he's going through that emotional withdrawal from her, her from him to do this. It's quite, it's a long process, right? As you can imagine. But I would say, I wish I could remember the name of it, but it's out there. It's a documentary about this that absolutely doesn't matter what age you are, you can absolutely have the relationship you desire. But you first got to get over that hurdle because a lot of people say, well, I'd love to have it, but this is never going to happen for me now. I'm too old. And, those voices in your head are going to talk you out of it. But the truth is that they're just stories. It's just your own mind playing tricks on you. So the first thing is you got to get over that and say, okay, well, and maybe you don't believe that, but you believe it enough to say, at least I'm going to try, right? At least I'm going to put it out there. And that's okay because it's stepping stones. You don't have to like totally believe something to begin with, but maybe you can believe it could be possible for you. And then as it goes on, you say, well, now I know it's possible for me. Now the question is, do you think I can find the right person for me? And so on and so on. But you got to, what do they say? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, right? Just make that first step, and then things will start to unfold from there. But I do believe if that's your intention, uh, things, situations, people, circumstances will come about that will give you the opportunity. Then it's up to you to take those opportunities, right?
What role do you think limiting beliefs plays in our perception of if we can get love or not?
Mm. Well, I worked with Tony Robbins, right, for a number of years, right? So he used to call them living beliefs. I call them transparent beliefs. And the reason I say they're transparent is because you can't see them. You don't know you have them, right? It's one thing to know that limiting beliefs hold us back, but then you got to find them, right? So transparent beliefs are beliefs that we probably had most of our lives that we don't see, but they're controlling our lives. Some of the examples we've talked about, right? Believing that we're not good enough, we're believing that something's not possible, we're too old, we're too young, too right-handed, whatever it might be, right? so um, so we got to identify those transparent beliefs, or you could call them limiting beliefs, because they do limit you. There's no question about it, right? So you got to go through processes to do that. You either got to read books about it, you got to go to seminars about it, you got to have a coach to do it, because the whole point is the term transparent beliefs means you can't see them, right? So once you can accept you got these transparent beliefs and you'd like to identify them, so you've got the awareness. So it starts with awareness, right? So you've got the awareness that they're there because things aren't working and you don't know why, right? This keeps happening to me. So first of all, you got to say it's happening to you because it isn't happening to you. It's happening for you, right? It's a gift, right? And these patterns will repeat until you see them, until you at least see there is a pattern that you're recreating the same thing over and over again. And in order to change that pattern, you've got to change. It's you that's got to change. And we talked about this from the beginning, right? We keep going full circle. It's you that's got to change. So either, get help in whatever way you feel most comfortable. Say, feel comfortable getting. I would say just find the way, even if you're uncomfortable, right? Because our life begins at the end of our comfort zone, not while we're in it, right? We have to be able to step beyond what we know, and that's not going to be comfortable. That's why it's unknown, right? If you just stay where everything you know, and I've got, I've got control of everything, I know what's going to happen, then how are you going to grow? You can't, right? And what we're taught by society a little bit is stay comfortable, do as you're told, get a job, save for the future. And I say to people, how's that working for you so far, right? That's not where you want to be. I love that quote by I'm not going to remember George Bernard Shaw. Thank God I could just remember that. Can you imagine? I remember that quote by what's his name? So anyway, George Bernard Shaw said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man demands that the world adapt to him. Therefore, all progress is dependent on the unreasonable man." Now, he said that back then when we didn't have the same, you know, you can't say man or the person, right? An unreasonable person. You got to be unreasonable. You know, and I write that in the book. I decided when I heard that quote and other quotes, I decided to be unreasonable, to expect more out of life, but more out of myself than other people would expect. Now, that wasn't an easy journey, right? So I would build up my life, and then I would go, yeah, but it's like, you think, oh, I want X. I want to have this great girlfriend, right? So you get the great girlfriend, it's like you get that, yeah, no, that's not it. Right? So then you go after something else. And it's a never-ending journey of stuff outside of yourself that you think you want that is going to make you happy. And we know that's never going to happen. There is nothing outside of yourself that will ever fulfill you. What will fulfill you is when you're fulfilled in yourself, right? When you found you got to have a purpose in life. Sounds like a cliche. Well, everybody knows I've got to have a purpose, but I can't figure out what my purpose is. Yes, you can. No one's going to tell you what that is. If someone just said, well, your purpose is to be a coal miner, and say, okay, all right, so they go down coal mining, go, yeah, but I don't like it. It's not really making me happy. I'm miserable. Then that's not your purpose. Your purpose is something you're going to love to do that you would do for free if doing it for free would feed you, right? Because that doing what that is going to feed your soul. And that, along with some other things, you got a mission of, I call it a mission, vision, and purpose. So you can be an MVP or most valuable player in life. Once you have that, the material world no longer has any real power over you. Yes, you got to eat. Yes, you got to drink. Yes, you got to live. But beyond that, there's not a lot else you really need, right? Most people give up being happy to make money or to have a new car or a new home or live in this neighborhood or live in that neighborhood and what they're doing is giving up what's more important than that, which is their happiness, right? Because they're now to be fair, we are led down the wrong path from being very young because there are people in this world, we've got to face reality, that are going to use us for their own ends if they can and if we allow them to, right? And they will brainwash us, right? They will teach us that time is money, and it isn't. They will teach us that you got the harder you work, the more you're going to have. Not true. These are all lies that are implanted in our brain from a very early age. There was a minister, I think he was in Germany. He's very famous, but I can't remember his name, I'll be honest, right? But he said, give me your child. He used to say, he talked about a boy. He said, give me your boy until he's 7 years old, and I will show you the man. Right? That's when we're formed. Our belief systems are formed then, our character is built then, or destroyed then. That's where it all happens. And that's why, as you know, being in therapy, you got to know about their childhood. You got to know about their childhood trauma because that's where it began, right? And then it just becomes a pattern that repeats itself that maybe looks a little different, but it's the same thing. And when you can get them to realize that and to help them change that pattern, it's like going back through their life and shh, it all just changes. What they thought happened to them, they can now see, wow, it didn't happen to me, it happened for me. It was a gift disguised as trauma. It was a gift disguised as something terrible happened to me. But now I see, had that not happened, I wouldn't be who I am today.
I love that you put that at the end of that. It's very important because I grew up without my mother, my father, and growing up, I was like, "Woe is me." That's such a bad thing to happen. I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother was someone who was very of service.
Mm,
She shaped me to be the person I am today,
mm,
which allowed me to find love and passion, as you mentioned, in helping others. So, did it happen to me or for me? Because without that upbringing, would I still be the person I am today?
right.
And if I have a choice to either go through it or not go through it, but not be who I am today, I would go through that same experience every day.
Yeah. Well, that's enlightenment, man. Unfortunately, as you also know, not many people are prepared to take that journey to that realization because they're so attached to their victimness. It's how they get attention. It's how they get sympathy. It's how they get through the day by being a victim. And they don't want to lose that. And so they don't want you to fix that, right? They want you to help them fix everybody else, right? And to sympathize with them and say, "Oh my God, they did that to you. What terrible people they are," you know, and that's what they're looking for. And I just tell people, look, if you're committed to that, then fine. That's what you're choosing to do. But I can't help you. I can't help you. You know, the only way we can work together is if you're going to accept that there are some things that you need to look at in a different way, accept things in a different way, and find the silver lining in everything that's happened in your life. Because otherwise, you're just going to stay where you are no matter what I try. It's like an elastic band or a rubber band, right? You can pull it so far that it'll snap back because it's so strong. And those beliefs, those transparent beliefs or limiting beliefs, are powerful. There's no question about it, right? And as long as you hang on to those things, you're only going to stretch those elastic bands or rubber bands so far, right?
In general, then, why do you think some people are still trapped, either by choice or by? Let me pause there. I know how you're going to answer that, but I'm going to word it this way so we're generalizing
Well, I
it.
can't get out of that. Okay, right.
Like, you can't get out of it. Exactly. Why do you think some people are still trapped in their trauma, in their victim mentality, either by choice or by circumstances?
Mm, okay. So if you think about what you just said, right? They're trapped by choice. Therefore, they're not trapped, right? They got to make a different choice, right? And your circumstances, you can change your circumstances as well, right? So you're not in a trap, really. It seems like it. And the more that words are powerful, right? So, and so are metaphors, right? So metaphors are a magnification of the words, right? And if you say to yourself, "I'm at the end of my rope," you're at the end of your rope. You feel like you're at the end of your rope. That's powerful, right? So we want to, make sure we're using language that will support us, metaphors that will help us um, at a very basic level. So why people stay in that trauma, I did sort of answer some of it. Is because they're used to it, and better the devil they know than the devil they don't, right? Yeah, at least I know this. I know this pain. I'm used to this pain. I can handle this pain. But what you're saying is to get outside my comfort zone, right? And go and experience something different, which could be worse, right? I don't know, right? And I'm surviving doing this. And some people are prepared to accept survival. Other people, you could just not be aware of it again, right? You're just not aware of it. Why do I keep doing this? The problem is when you ask yourself with the question, why, it's an endless loop, right? You're just going to see why me? Why did this happen to me, right? And that's just an endless loop question. So a better question would be, how can I change it? What can I do to take responsibility and accountability? So one of the big changes for me in my limiting beliefs or transparent beliefs, what do you want to call it? I was a victim. I could, when I was growing up, I could tell you all the things my parents did to me, right? I could tell you about all the things that the kids at school did to me, right? And then growing up, it went from there. Once I left school, or actually I ran away from school, but anyway, I got away from school. Um, I could continue to tell you that throughout my life. It just goes with you. It stays with you. So one of the beliefs that helped me change that was the one we've talked about, which is nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. Now it sounds very simple. It's a very simple belief, right? It's different to live it. It's easy to live it when everything's going great, right? Yeah, this is happening for me, right? This didn't happen to me, it's happening for me. But when there are tragedies, traumas, and things that happen in your life that seem insurmountable, that make you feel hopeless, that make you feel alone, then, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, you can go far down as, a physical, sexual abuse. You go down. How do you figure out, how do you get into that stuff and go, well, this happened for me, right? Some people get angry. I work with people, who've been raped. I've worked with people that have had trauma, been abused by their parents physically and sexually. And they go, that's just, you don't understand. There's no way that happened for me. And again, when they get that upset about it, it's they're hanging on to that identity, right? Just like, when you said a minute ago, right? Which is beautiful, man. Your parents handed you over to your grandmother. And at the time, that had to be traumatizing and for probably quite a lot of your life, right? But you came to the realization that that was a gift because she gave you the gift of caring, of being able to be vulnerable, help other people. And what a gift, right? Sometimes I use the example of Michael Jackson, right? His father was an asshole, right? He was really tough on him, right? Really, really tough. But look at the talent that came out of it. But he could never make that connection. He could never forgive his father, right? And that caused him all kinds of trauma in his personal life, right? Because of that trauma that was um, unresolved, right? So although on stage he was able to do this amazing dancing and the songs that he created were so incredible, but he was never happy. He was never happy. And unfortunately, because he was so successful and because he had so much money, he could find ways not to have to face that because no one was going to be strong enough to say, Michael, look, we got to do the inner work, man, because otherwise it's never going to mean anything for you. But nobody could say that. He would just surround himself with doctors who would give him the drugs that he wanted that ultimately killed him. So there's all kinds of reasons why people will stay in their stuff. But at the same time, sometimes staying in your stuff, we'll use Michael Jackson again. Look how many lives he changed. Look how many people still sing his songs today that have powerful memories around that music, that were deeply touched by that. It doesn't mean if they stay in it that they can't change lives or make the world a better place. Um, I mean, think about some of his songs. They were so beautiful because they were coming from such a place of pain, of hurt, but a compassion because he understood the human condition, right? So uh, so the answer again is, maybe sometimes it's not so bad to do that. So I talk about my this relationship that I had in this book, which is a true story, right? And the lady that came in my life, beautiful lady, and someone I love and I will always love, and I'm incredibly grateful that she came into my life to teach me. So my belief is, right or wrong, there were all points of light. And we come into this experience and we forget who we are so we can have experiences, and we forget who we are for others so they can experience things. And I strongly believe that she was a master teacher for me. And she's come into this life to help people heal. And she helped me. I mean, I've worked with countless gurus and famous individuals, and I've learned a lot from them, tremendous amount. But the most powerful experience of my life that taught me the most was this experience with her. And she gifted that to me. She gave me a freedom I've never experienced before. And so you say, well, why? What happened? Well, a lot of things, but one of the primary things is the ability to be vulnerable. You talked about humility and that kind of thing, but vulnerability is one of the most powerful things you can do. Why? Well, because it means being your authentic self. It means spilling the beans, all right? Or what do they say now? Spilling the tea, right? Right? Talking about those things deep down that you've been afraid to say out loud, that you've been afraid anybody would ever know about you. Skeletons in the closet, the things that you're judging yourself for, right? Before anybody else gets a chance, right? Because you believe that you will be cast out from society, that people you love might not love you anymore. And I ain't taking that chance. I'm not going to tell you this about myself. So that is when you're in a trap. But you got in the trap because you made a choice not to bring that up, right? So what I made a choice to do in this book is to be vulnerable and say, hey, listen, if I want people to get the most out of life, if I want people to if I want to give people the tools to be who they really are in the presence of others, that's the greatest gift you can have. I got to show that I'm prepared to do it, right? And there are things when I started to write, I go, do I really want to write that? Do I really want people to know about that and that about me? But it's in there, you know. I was admitted to and I call it an insane asylum. That would not be the word you would use today, but I call it an insane asylum because that's what it was. It wasn't. I was insane, right? So, but that's not something I ever wanted to tell anybody, right? Because the fear of the social stigma. What are people going to think about me? You know, uh, people think you're crazy, right? All the time. I'm not crazy all the time, just most of the time. So anyway, but people are going to judge you, and I talk about other things that happened to me as a kid when I was in school, right? And traumatic relationships and stuff. So by doing that, hopefully I'm giving other people permission to do the same, right? And so what this did, and going back to Tamaz in the book, uh, she inspired me to be who I really am because we all have flaws, we all have faults, but one of the things that I really admired about her, she was who she really is. No, wasn't looking for anybody's endorsement or anybody's acceptance. And she said to me many times, look, this is what you get. This is who I am, right? And you got to admit, you kind of love it. You kind of hate it, you kind of love it, right? You want the madness and craziness when it's fun, but you also have to accept it on the other side. She was amazing. She was so intelligent, right? And I go, you got a point. I guess, what can I say, right? So I looked at those things, and I also knew that I was going through a lot. I knew this relationship was untenable. It was just impossible for us to be together long term. So I took it for what it was, and I had the experiences I had, which were very often traumatic. It added more trauma in my life, right? But the trauma was because the meaning I was giving it, right? And so I had to check in, right? Wait a second. She didn't do that to you. She did it for you. I'll give you an example, right? So we were having an argument. And there's nothing wrong with having arguments. And there's nothing wrong with the emotions. Nothing wrong with getting angry. There's a reason for anger. But if you get angry and you don't express it to its fulcrum and come back to peace, you're going to keep that energy inside and it will destroy you, right? So anyway, here's my point. So in this particular part of the relationship, I was away. She broke into the house, and there's a longer story to this, but the bottom line is she broke into the house, and I was away. So when I come home, she of course is gone, right? And I look around the house, and everything seems fine. Hmm. So I go in the kitchen, I make myself a cup of tea. Talk about spilling the tea, right? So I put the kettle on, and I leave the kitchen. I come back in. Kettle's not working, right? What's wrong with it? Look behind it. She's cut the wire. So now I'm thinking, oh God, no, please tell me she hasn't cut the wire of every electrical plate. She'd cut the wire to everything, the TVs, the lamps, everything. It looked perfectly normal, but it wasn't. Now, I have, since a kid, it's funny how this happens in your childhood, right? So as a kid, my mother, things were tough. We didn't have a lot of money, right? So she got me to go into school in school clothes that were like 10 times too big, right? And so I got humiliated by teachers didn't know anything about self-esteem back then. You'd be walking through the playground and the teacher go, Edwards, come here. What are you wearing? You know what I mean? And other kids are looking at why are you wearing that? What are you going to say? You just like cower, right? So all this stuff was happening. So anyway, by the time I was 9, I was finding ways to make enough money to buy my own school clothes, right? And ever since then, clothes have been very important to me because I never want to be laughed at. I want to have nice clothes. I want to, so at that time I was doing pretty well. And so I had this wardrobe of beautiful clothes, right? So now I'm thinking, oh shit, no, man, please, right? So I go into the bedroom, go into the closet. First off, looks fine. So then I go in there and I start pulling back the clothes, and of course she's ripped them all up, right? Everything, right? So now, did I say in that moment, yeah, this didn't happen to me, it happened for me? No, I got angry, right? I was fuming, right? I was like, God, I can't believe she did this. And I would say I never wanted to hurt her, but I wanted to kill her, right? I never wanted to hurt her, but I wanted to kill her. Anyway, so this went on, I don't know, maybe 24 hours. And finally, I'm kind of sitting in a chair, looking out the window, and I go, all right, yeah, I know. I've said it. Nothing happens to you. Everything happens for you. Okay. Right. So there's a lot of resistance to actually going to that place. So I said, okay. So what's the lesson here? What can I learn from this? First off, it's only clothes, right? It's clothes, right? It's non-material. It's clothes. Nobody's hurt. We're still alive. Yeah, but that's not it. And then I got it, man. Attachment. I was attached to those damn clothes, right? And so she took them away from me so I could see that. And I went, whoa, I hadn't even realized that. Yeah, beautiful. And so she gave me the gift to experience that. Now, it didn't obviously, it doesn't end with clothes, right? I mean, by then, I mean, I had everything you could imagine, right? So by little by slow, I was able to really get deep down into that attachment thing. Now, am I over it 100%? I'm not over anything 100%, right? But I'm a lot further along the road than I was before I met her and I had that experience, right? So, one of the things about healing, what is healing? Well, what is any, everything is healing in one way, shape, or form. Or there's not just like you have this, like, you you broke your arm, so you heal it. It's everything is healing you if you give it the opportunity through the patterns and through the mirrors, right? Um, so I was going to say something different than that, right? So this process was a healing process to rediscover because we know who we really are, right? But we've forgotten. We came into this life at a certain level of remembrance and a certain level of forgetfulness so we can have these experiences that we have. And I think one of our obligations and opportunities is to, as we learn, and I think you mentioned this yourself, the wisdom that you have, then the obligation kind of is to pass that on to people that are coming up behind you that need that helping hand, right? While we're still looking up and getting a helping hand from people that are further along than we are, right? And that comes down to being humble at the same time, doesn't it, right? So we've got to be able to embrace both those things at the same time. So, yeah, just remembering who we are. Who we are is not a human being, a spirit. We're a spiritual being. We come into this existence to forgetting some of it so we can have experiences. Because if we remembered who we really are from the beginning, we couldn't have an experience because it'd be perfect, right? And how boring would that be? I mean, who wants to be with someone who's perfect? That'd be a nightmare, right? So, and it's not our perfection that we love in each other. It's our imperfection, right? We love the imperfection in each other. That's what draws us to each other, right? Um, and so, and when we're fully healed, we won't be here anymore, right? It's like, what's the point, right? Let's go, right? We're gonna levitate into a different dimension at that point, right? So, I don't know if that answered the question, but that's my response.
It does, and it reminds me of someone I grew up with. He had a similar story. He grew up poor, but his parents got into some money, and then his parents divorced, and he lived with his mother.
Mm,
He became attached to money because his mother became attached to money. She remembered how life was.
mm,
She didn't want to go back there, and she was going to do whatever it took not to go back there.
yeah.
He starts dating. He starts using his money to attract women, like a lot of guys, right? Look at my car, look at my house, look at the
What we're
jewelry,
taught.
look at
It's what we're
everything.
taught,
Of
man.
course, yeah, we're taught that. He's attached. He dates this girl. Things don't go the way that they would want it to go. She feels like he was using her,
Mm,
right?
mm.
That's a whole nother podcast for another day, my friend.
Yeah.
She knows where he lives in the condo that he lives. He happens to be somewhere. He goes to the gym in that condo. He runs into the girl. Now this girl has two other guys, and she's like, "Oh, do you remember me?" So now he gets his phone. He starts calling me. He's like, "Hey, this girl, she's here. I don't know what's going to happen. I was like, by the time I get there, if they wanted to do something too, they would have done it already.
Mhm.
He goes outside to his car because he always parked outside. His car on fire.
Mhm.
She took away his car.
Mhm.
She took away his pride. She took away his ego. Three things that he was attached to.
Mhm.
That was something that took him years
Mhm.
to come to terms with. Some people still crack jokes about it now, and it brings him to that space, and then
Mhm.
he has to go home. It's hard for us sometimes to break that attachment. Like you said, in that moment, did he say, well, this is being done for me?
Mhm. Mhm.
Or is this being done to me? Because I'm going to be honest, if my car's on fire, it's definitely being done to me.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure, in that moment. But let's think about this. How many people are trying to get rid of their ego? How many people are trying to get rid of their pride? How many people are working their ass off to do that? And it happened for him in an instant. If if he'd been ready to take it, but he wasn't. That wasn't the journey he was on, right? Um, so that's a trap again, right? That we choose because society says women want to be with men who have money, and they do. But it's not the money, it's the security. But in society, we equate security with money, right? So women are going to be attracted to men with money, but are they at the level of awareness that you want them to be? You make that choice, right? So if you work your ass off to be wealthy and rich so you can attract the right woman, it's never going to happen, right? You're going to attract a woman that's attracted to men with what money, and that's what they're going to be looking for. But then what you realize is, well, what if I lose my money? Will she leave me? 100%, right? Because she wants to be with a man who's got lots of money. It's a self fulfilling prophecy, right? Yeah. And they would swear up and down. That woman would swear up and down. You say, do you love him? Oh, yeah, I love him. Yeah. Well, if you didn't have any money, well, then I wouldn't love him. That's not love, right? No, let's just talk about something. That isn't love, right? But that's a reality, right? Yeah. And then the woman's thinking, he had money so he could attract a beautiful woman. And she's thinking, well, what if I lose my beauty? What if I'm not beautiful anymore? What if he sees a younger woman than me and wants to be with her? You got two people living in fear, right? That can't be healthy, and it's going to destroy that relationship. Because if there's a handsome man around her with a lot of money, he's going to be jealous. If he's around women who are younger than her or more beautiful than her, she's going to be jealous. Now, what are the chances of those two things happening? 100%, right? 100%. It's going to happen, right? And then they start to think, well, what if he leaves me? Well, maybe I should have another guy just in case, right? And vice versa. So then you've got extramarital affairs going on. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It all came from the beginning of the fears and the trauma that have brought you into the relationship. And it's just going to play itself out, right? So you got to go deeper. You got to go deeper. If that's what you want. Now, if you just want to have a girl you can play with that is beautiful and you can mess around with, which I did, right? Uh, then don't expect anything different. You got to accept the reality you've created. But at some point, I believe most people are going to want something more meaningful and lasting, right? So you can grow old together and still be having fun holding hands on the beach when you're 95 years of age. And who knows what you get up to in the bedroom by then.
I always tell people what you lead with is what's going to set your dating expectations.
I agree.
You lead with beauty, they're only going to value that. You lead with your wallet, same
Uh,
thing.
Absolutely. 100%, man. 100%. Yeah. And I would say that, I would see that in women. All you're doing is leading with your beauty, and then you wonder why men objectify you because that's what you're leading with, right? So you're going to attract men that see that. That's the most important thing to them. And they're not going to look at you as a person, they're looking at you as an object. But you created it. You drew that person into your life.
We're hopeful creatures. Do you think sometimes we hope if we lead with our wallet or beauty that eventually they'll love us for everything but that?
Absolutely, of course, right? Of course, we want to be loved for who we are, but we'll fool ourselves in thinking, well, if I'm attracted because of my money and my cars and my home, then I can get to that. No, that person that you're with was attracted to that stuff. What makes you think they're suddenly not going to be attracted to that anymore? No, you got to lead with who you are. And if someone's attracted to who you are, you're good. Now that doesn't mean you're not going to have to work at the relationship though, because some people go, "Oh, now I got her. Now I can relax. I got no problem. Right? We're married now, right?" And women do the same thing to some extent. You can. It's an everyday. We say work at it. All right. So don't say work because people don't want to work at something, but you've got to be making effort. It's like sometimes an extreme here would be, you know, two people in a relationship at a therapist, right? And she says, what's one of the hurtful things he does or doesn't do? He never tells me he loves me. And then his response is, "What are you talking about? I told you 2 years ago I love you." Okay, I think we might see part of the problem, right?
Well, she did say never, and he did
Yeah,
say I did
exactly.
say it right. So it goes back to your thing, the proper words.
He's right.
But now we're the jerk, right? Because we're
Yeah,
agreeing with the madness.
that's right. Yes. Yeah, that's
It's
right.
interesting. I used to date a girl and I read the book Love Languages, and her love language was gift giving.
Yeah, I
Mine
would.
was words of affirmation. I think a lot of men want that. You're doing well. You make me feel safe. I feel secure, right? I think a lot of men want that. We just don't say it.
I would agree.
Now, the issue is my childhood trigger was her love language because when I was growing up, anytime my parents wanted to tell me to shut up, they'd say, "Hey, Terrain, here's a new toy." So I began to resent gifts from
Yeah,
my childhood.
yeah,
So when she's giving me all these gifts, I'm trying to think, why is she doing this? Is there a meaning to it? Because the love was conditional.
yeah.
Now, words of affirmation for her, like what a lot of girls go through, you look pretty, you look nice.
Huh?
Guy gets her, does whatever, and then discards her in some cases. Not all the time, in some cases.
Yeah,
So that was her trigger from her early years because she had children from another situation and that's what happened.
yeah,
So we're loving each other in the ways that we want to be loved, but not in the ways that the other person wants to be loved. This was years ago. I figured it out first. I was like, oh, okay. I asked her, "You giving gifts? Is that how you want to be loved?" So I had to work on myself to give her gifts.
yeah, yeah.
When it came to words of affirmation, Stephen, "I love you, Terrain." I'm like, can you give me a little bit more emotion?
Yeah,
It seems like, but
why
she's
do you love me?
trying.
Actually, I had that experience and I write about in the book because I would say I love you. She said, you always say I love you, but why do you love me?" Right? Okay.
Give me something to work with here. Why? What did
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do?
yeah, yeah. So true, man. Yeah, and we all do have love languages, and you're right. There are tendencies for men and women to go for certain ones, and that's a great book, by the way. It's a great book. But what it does more than anything is what happened for you, which is encourages you to find out, right? That you now recognize from reading that, okay, we don't all receive love the same way. And if I want to stay with this person, I got to find out what her love language is and make sure I communicate my love to her through that language. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great book, man. Even to this day, and it's been out a long time. But again, you'd think this should be part of a curriculum at school, right? This is something we should be taught, right? Why is it just not in that education system? Because the education system was never created to prepare you for life. It was prepare you to get a job, right? It was prepared you to work your ass off for 40 years, 40 hours a week, right? For $40,000 a year. We said the 40-40-40 club, right? And going back even further, kids never went to school. They were going down the coal mine, and that was it. You didn't have a choice. What are you going to go to school for? You're just going to go work down the coal mine. And kids were down there at 12, 13, 14, hacking away at the coal mine until it caved in and killed them, right? Or the canary sang and they got out just in time because they didn't have safety or the things that they have down the mines now. Not that I'm suggesting that now you go to work down a gold mine, but my point is, uh, throughout history, a lot of choice that we have today was never even given to us, never even given to us in the first place, right? And now I think we take a lot of things for granted. Yeah, and that's dangerous, right? Because then it takes away your opportunity to appreciate what you have. And gratitude is a massive, powerful tool, you know, to use on a daily basis. Well, what are you grateful for today? What are you grateful for in your life? I mean, people just don't say that, or not many people. There are people that say it, but there's not as many as probably there should be. And now you see kids that have everything, and it's never enough. It's never enough, man. And you're thinking, whoa, if I'd have had half of that stuff when I was a kid, I would think I'd be pretty happy, right? But you wouldn't, because it's just stuff. You were probably happier without all that stuff because you had to use your own creativity, right? You had to go outside and, spend time with your friends. You got out and played a sport sometimes, or you learned a musical instrument, or you did something with your time rather than be sitting in front of an electronic phone or a Xbox or something. And therefore your life, in a way, you had less but you had more. And I say to people, look, you got to have less in order to have more. What do you mean? The more I have, the better? No, because the more you have, there was a possessions, right? Yeah. Well, what's the word? Where does the word possession come from? Possess. Those things that you think are so important to you possess you, right? Because they take time, energy, effort to maintain, to keep. And if you don't do those things, they you ignore them, and what you ignore disappears, right? So, for example, when I was making whatever amount of money I was making a year, it doesn't really matter. But I had a lot of material things. I had beautiful cars, beautiful home, but they all take energy. They take a tremendous amount of energy to get in the first place. They take a tremendous amount of time. It takes energy to maintain them. It takes money to get them, to maintain them, which also takes effort. And then when you don't have them, you have less, but you've got more. You've got more time. You've got more energy. You've got more peace, right? So less is more. You've heard the saying, less is more, and it really is. Now, most people are going to go, oh, that's bullshit. I know if I've got this car, I'm going to be happy. I know I'm going to pull chicks. I know that I'm going to do that. Well, yeah, well, let me know how that goes for you. And maybe that's a journey you need to take. You know, there's nothing wrong with having nice things. The problem is attachment. That goes back to you've heard the phrase from the Bible: it is more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to slip through the eye of a needle, right? Because the humps of the camel are attached to it. It can't take the humps off to get into heaven. And very often, rich men or women, they can't let go of their stuff in order to get to that place, right? Because they're too afraid to lose those things because they feel like they're part of their identity. They think that that's who they are. They think they are their car. They think they are the house. They think they are the beautiful wife. They think that all that stuff is who they are, and it isn't. That's not who they are.
Steve, let me ask you one final question before I let you go today. I want to give you three wishes. What are three things you wish people knew about gratitude in relationships and why?
Well, if you're grateful for something, you see the gift, right? And everybody in your life is a gift in one way, shape, or a form of another. So what do I mean by that? Well, you've heard the phrase, your life is either an example or a warning, right? So if their experience in your life is a warning, then move away, make that change in yourself. You're not going to attract that anymore. And if you are grateful for them and you know why you're grateful for them, you see the gift that they're bringing to your life. It's not just, oh, I'm going to, say every day I'm going to count the things I'm grateful for, but you go, I'm grateful. That's not really being grateful. That's just reciting a list, right? So you've got to give yourself time to really feel that gratitude, right? It's all about feeling. How do you feel inside, right? What does that person, that item that you're grateful for, what does it bring to your life, right? How does it enhance your life, right? So, when people talk about, we're getting off the track a little bit here, but, manifestation is not born out of thinking, it's born out of feeling. Anybody that tells you about manifestation that really knows will tell you that, people might pray for rain, can help, but if you go outside and you get your hands in the mud and you have the feeling that you're being rained on from above and you're in the water from the rain and you feel it, it's probably going to rain, right? It's probably going to rain, right? But again, even if it doesn't physically rain, it's raining in your imagination, and the brain cannot tell the difference between something vividly imagined and something that happens in our reality.